Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to this November 20th, 2013 edition of Nightcast. Tonight in the news, Indonesia. Mount Sinabung erupted several times last night and this morning, forcing people living nearby to flee. We've got some video I'm going to run it in the background. There's no commentary with it, but actually I'm going to bring it forward a little bit. Let you see what's happening with that volcanic ash. You know, in the last... Since November 8, when we had the huge Typhoon Haiyan on the Philippines, and we have video for you again on that tonight. And then the tornadoes in the United States with 200-mile-per-hour winds, and I believe we had something else yesterday, and now this. There's a lot of activity going on related to the fourth seal of Revelation, which is depicted by Revelation as a pale horse whose rider is named Death, and alongside whom Hades, hell of the grave, rides. Now, this just happened last night and this morning. No commentary. I don't have any more details on this story yet, but we are going to be watching this, and we'll bring you more details on it as we get them. Now, related, because there's been so much in the news of late related to that fourth seal, some of you recognize that fourth seal as disease epidemics, and that it is, because as this chart from Revelation shows, Jesus Christ described the activities of this horse in plain language with three different terms that the gospel writers wrote up. One of those terms was loimos. That's where we get the disease epidemics, pestilence, the plagues of Egypt. We get it from that term, loimos, in the Greek. Jesus Christ, in plain language, also described the activities of this horse as seismos, seismic activity, which the English-Greek lexicons define as commotions in the air, such as gale force winds. That includes all kinds of things: typhoons, cyclones, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, wildfires, excess rain causing floods, etc., and commotions on the ground. And it gives the example of earthquakes, and of course then there's volcanic eruptions like this that you're seeing in the background here from Indonesia last night and this morning. And sometimes those have ash flow and they kill people. But because there's been so much in the news related to these things tonight, and by the way, before I pulled some video from the archive I want to show you related to this. But we've got video on all kinds of things tonight, including follow-up on what's going on in the Philippines, what's going on in Geneva with the Iranian nuclear talks, and other things. And so we got a lot of news tonight, but we have time for this. And I've got that video that caused me to come on at our usual broadcast time and tell you I'd be back after we downloaded that video, and we made it back, as I told you. And I've got a video featuring Dore Gold speaking, and wow, does he hit to the core of what people should be recognizing and noticing and thinking, how people should be thinking about what's happening right now in Geneva with those Iranian nuclear talks. We'll have that shortly in the program. But this video that I have for you next, I got from our archive from July 2010 that shows a giant South Dakota hailstone that broke United States records. That it's a hailstone that weighed almost a kilo that fell in the state of South Dakota. And we're going to watch this video from 2010, July 2010. It confirms as the largest ever, this hailstone that broke through that house, the largest hailstone ever recovered in the USA. According to the National Weather Service, the hailstone that landed in the town of Vivian eclipsed previous records that had been set in Nebraska, or that had been set anywhere. But this one clipped it. This happened in Nebraska. Well, let me see. Wait a minute. The previous record was held by a hailstone that landed in Nebraska in 2003, and then before that there was one in Kansas in 1970. David Campanella has the full report.
This immense hole was caused by a hailstorm of biblical proportions, with rocks of ice pounding into cars and homes. Measuring 20.5 centimetres in diameter with a 47 centimetre circumference, it was found by a local man who ventured out of his home. His first thought was to use it to make a daiquiri drink, but he called the experts in, who concluded this was a record breaker.
Officially, where records have been kept, this will be the U.S. record and the world record for weight. So very impressive.
The town suffered widespread damage, with hailstones punching through the top of buildings and going deep into the ground. The finder said the ice chunk had been even bigger, but with no power to keep the freezer going, it had shrunk by 5 centimetres.
I'm glad I got it, I guess. But I'm just sad about the town of Vivian. I just hope the insurance people help them out as much as they can, because they need it.
It's now gone to a federal lab, where scientists hope to discover more about how hailstones form. David Campanelli, BBC News.
Poor fellow, knocked him out of his daiquiri drink. I don't know if I'd have turned that in myself. Anyway, friends, that happened in July. That's a report from July 2010. And biggest hailstone in the United States. And as the Great Tribulation comes on, I think we're going to see some bigger than that. And maybe some people will definitely want to make a daiquiri out of it then. All right, I'm just being silly. Let's get serious. World leader. Now, before I show you that video with Dore Gold speaking from today, it was put on YouTube. So you'll be able to watch it there if you want to, again and again and again, or you can replay our show again. We were able to record it, and I'll have that for you in a moment. First, though, I want to play you video from today's news showing world leaders who've gathered in Geneva for fresh talks with Iran. They're attempting to secure a deal on the country's nuclear program. Both sides have expressed confidence that a breakthrough can be achieved. Yeah, wait till you hear Dore Gold. It's naivete to think this is going to work. But the lead of this story says, but ahead of the talks, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned that the country would not back down over the issue. Friends, we got to realize what we're dealing with here. Wait till you hear Dore Gold. But here's a report first with James Reynolds reporting from Geneva.
The world power's chief negotiator, Lady Ashton, has a driver. But she probably knows Geneva's roads well enough to take the wheel herself. This is the third time in the last 5 weeks that she's been here for nuclear talks. She wants to persuade this man, Iran's foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, to limit Iran's nuclear program in exchange for some sanctions relief. He's posted his thoughts online.
For us Iranians, nuclear energy is not about joining a club or threatening others. Nuclear energy is about a leap, a jump toward deciding our own destiny.
These talks are essentially an effort to try to sort out Iran's place in the world and in its own region. So the discussions, some of which are taking place here, affect the shape of the entire Middle East. And in that region, Iran's supreme leader has told a loyal audience that he is watching the talks closely. Any final decision on a nuclear agreement will be made by him.
Although we do not intervene in the details of these talks, there are certain red lines, there are limits, and these limits have to be observed.
On a visit to Istanbul, Britain's Foreign Minister William Hague raised the possibility of an interim agreement.
This is an historic opportunity to build agreement on how to curb nuclear proliferation in the Middle East and potentially to set our relations with Iran on a different path. It is the best chance for a long time to make progress on one of the gravest problems in foreign policy.
For a decade, that problem has defeated teams of negotiators. Diplomats here have 3 days to see if they can draft a deal for a first step. James Reynolds, BBC News, Geneva.
Friends, I tell you, I am surprised at some of the leaders who are naive going into this thing so naively. I think Dore Gold has a good focus, keeps his head on. Now, I'm going to summarize what you're going to hear. He may repeat some of the things. Repetition is one of the best forms of emphasis. So if I repeat some of the things you're going to hear Dore Gold say, I'm not going to apologize. I'm just going to say, be sure you listen up, because this represents good thinking. He's going to essentially say there are voices in the West who think that if you recognize Iran's right of enrichment, the crisis between Iran and the West will just go away. But it will only get much worse. And it will lead to many other countries saying, oh, there's a right of enrichment? We're going to build enrichment facilities too. Now you'll hear him make that quote absolutely for certain. And the whole structure of nuclear non-proliferation will begin to erode and could even collapse. That's another quote you'll hear him make. It's clear that Iran has an intent to develop nuclear weapons, contrary to the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. So how can Iran demand what's guaranteed in Article 4, that is the right to develop civilian nuclear technology, and at the same time violate Article 2 and develop nuclear weapons? You can't derive benefit from an international treaty that you are violating in a most fundamental way. Considering Iran's missile programs, considering its warhead research, considering its systematic concealment of what it's doing to international inspectors, I don't think Iran can come with clean hands to the international community and say that it has a right to enrich uranium. That right must be denied to states that are suspected of engaging in nuclear weapons development. The writer of these comments is a former Israeli ambassador to the UN. He is president of the Jerusalem Center, for Public Affairs. Again, you're going to hear a lot of what I just read to you spoken by Dore Gold himself in this video.
Iran's claim that it has a right to enrich uranium is one of the main issues on the agenda in the Geneva talks.
Has been to the neighboring city of Conroe and has a report on how survivors